There are two stories. One is a Sufi story, and the other is a Tibetan folk tale. Let's see what they evoke for us. The first is a story of a couple who had a son, an only son, but the father was disappointed in the boy. He considered him a dreamer, a ne'er-do-well. And whilst he loved the boy, his disappointment showed in his manner towards him, derisive, chiding, scornful. The boy tried so hard to please his father, knowing that his father was a good man at heart, even though he was opinionated. But no matter what the boy did, he could not change the intransigent manner of his dad. Now his mother also loved the boy dearly, and she tried so hard to be an intermediary between them, to make peace, to bring understanding, but unsuccessfully, until one day she had a thought, a plan, and that very evening, when her husband came home from work and her son came back from school, the husband sitting in his favorite chair reading the evening newspaper, the mother called the son to her and said, "Son, would you do something for me?" "Yes," said the son, "what is it you want me to do?" And the mother said, "Tonight I'm cooking a special dinner for us. Will you go out into the field and pick some flowers to place on the table?" "Yes," said the boy. But the father looked over the top of his newspaper and couldn't take the sneer off his face, nor stop the remark that came out of his mouth, "Don't you know this boy will never do anything properly? Why do you ask him to do something?" But the mother ignored this comment and took down from the shelf a wicker basket which she passed to her son. And off he went. Well, the dinner was cooked, and the dusk fell, and the time went by, and the boy did not return. The dinner got cold, and the father was already scolding the mother. "How could you send him out when you know he's so stupid he won't know what to do? And he's, look, you see what's happening?" But the mother kept her peace. And finally, as it was becoming quite dark, the son came back in the back door. Now the father was waiting. He was angry. He said, "You stupid boy, can't you undertake any simple thing that your mother asked you to do? Where have you been?" The basket was empty. The boy immediately burst into sobs and ran up the stairs and threw himself on the bed. The mother beckoned to the father to come with him. Very reluctantly, they walked up the stairs and went into the boy's room. The father standing at the doorway with his hands on his hips, and the mother going over to her son to hug him, gently asking him, "What happened, my son? What happened?" The father standing there, "Yes, tell us, why didn't you bring back and do what your mother told you to do?" The mother got up from beside the bed and came over to stand by her husband and waited until the boy's sobbing had eased. And he looked up at them and he said, "I'm sorry. I went out into the field and I bent down to pick the flower. But it was singing such a beautiful praise to divinity that I could not pluck it. So I went to the next flower, and the next flower, and the next. And each flower was singing its unique and glorious song to God. So I joined in the singing, and the time passed, and I realized it was late. And then I became afraid, but I knew that I had to come home and face whatever it was that awaited me." Now the mother turned to her husband, not knowing what effect this had on him, but when she looked, he had tears streaming down his face. He went over to his son and embraced him and said, "Oh, son, can you forgive this stupid, ignorant old man who has not recognized the treasure that he has had over all of these years?" And the second story is about a boy called Tashi, who was born in the mountains of Tibet. His father was a hunter. They were very poor, and they managed a subsistence living with the small animals that the father was able to catch and kill. But the father was grossly disappointed in his son, because his son would never kill. His son would not even eat the meat that his father caught to keep them alive. Now Tashi had 3 elder sisters, and each of them had married into wealthy families and moved on. So Tashi's mother and father were left, always complaining that there was no one to look after them when they grew old, because Tashi was incapable of following in his father's footsteps and being able to go out and hunt and gather to keep them fed. But one day, in a hope, Tashi's father took Tashi out with him to find food. They walked all day, but in all the long trekking, the father was only able to catch one small rabbit. They were both tired and hungry and thirsty. So they sat down on a rock and took out their little store of dried fruit and cheese, which was all that they had to sustain them. Tashi began to carve in the rock beside him the mantra of compassion, Om Mani Padme Om. Along this route that they'd taken was the route to a shrine, a well-known shrine. So in the rocks on the side of the road there were many carvings of this same mantra. But just at that moment, Tashi's father caught sight of a large hare standing in the middle of the field nearby. And immediately he became excited and took out his sling and was about to release the stone when Tashi shouted, "No, no, don't kill it!" And of course the hare took flight immediately. Tashi's father's face grew red, and Tashi could see that he was more angry than he'd ever known him to be. His father picked up a large stone and said, "I'm going to kill you! Kill you!" But as it happened, they were standing by a little rocky outcrop where there was a fissure that led to a cave, and Tashi was able to squeeze himself in the opening just as his father launched the rock at his head. But the rock hit Tashi's leg, causing a great gaping wound before he was able to move inside the opening. Tashi was bleeding profusely, and very soon he fell into unconsciousness. His father had long gone. But as Tashi came out of his unconsciousness, he heard the shuffling of feet. And although he was weak, he called out, and a head appeared in the opening, and then was removed, after which a small figure in saffron robes squeezed into the opening, and Tashi said to him, "I'm sorry, I've been hurt. I cannot make my way out of the cave." So the little monk assisted Tashi to squeeze out of the opening, and there his other two companions helped Tashi over to a little grassy spot where they dressed his wound and asked him what had happened. And Tashi explained his story. The head monk invited Tashi to join them on their pilgrimage, and dressing him in the saffron robes of a monk, they went about their wanderings. After visiting the shrine and making their way back, they happened on the house of Tashi's eldest sister, and there they sought alms and food. The eldest sister did not recognize her brother in the monk's robes, but very readily gave them food and asked, "My brother is missing. Have you seen him in your wandering?" "No," they said. They moved on and came to the house of the second sister, who also did not recognize Tashi, but gave them hospitality. And then, as they moved on, coming to the house of the third sister immediately recognized her brother, embraced him, and invited the monks to stay. But Tashi said, "No. Please, release me. I need to move on." Well, the younger sister invited her two elder sisters, and they had a celebration to send Tashi on his way. And they gave Tashi the gift of a horse. Now, after receiving this gift, Tashi parted ways with his three companion monks, and taking his horse, took another route to where he did not know. But that night, as he lay down to sleep in a meadow, he had a dream. He dreamt that his horse came to him and said, "Kill me, skin me, and scatter my hair across this field." Even in his dreams, Tashi could not kill. He refused to do so. But in the morning, when he looked for his horse, it was not to be found until he came to the edge of a precipice that was nearby the meadow. And there, on a rocky outcrop, was the carcass of his horse. He realized that he had to fulfill the dream that he had, since the horse had sacrificed its life. So Tashi did what in his dream he was asked to do. He skinned the horse, spread its carcass in the middle of the field, and spread its hair in the 4 directions. That night, again he dreamt, and in his dream, the horse was galloping away, but before it did so, it said, "This is the reward for your life of non-hurting." And in the morning, when Tashi woke up, the field was filled with sheep and cattle. And where the hide of the horse had lain, there was clearly the outline of a house to be built. Tashi prospered, and indeed he did build the house according to that which was laid out. But Tashi then realized that he must seek out his mother and father. So, placing 2 slabs of bread baked by his own hands, he made his way back to the simple house in which he was born and grew up. He did so wearing the robes of the mendicant monk. And when he arrived at their simple house, he climbed onto the roof, and looking in a roof window, he saw his mother and father huddled by a meager fire. He dropped one of the slabs of bread through the window, and the wife looked up. "Thank the Lord, blessings are coming from the heavens." Her husband hastily grabbed the bread and began to eat. Then Tashi threw the other for his mother. He then descended from the roof and came to the door and knocked, and immediately it was opened by his mother. She recognized her son, embraced him. His father begged his forgiveness, saying, "I too follow the Buddhist way, but life had forced me to seek and kill. I did so, giving honor to those animals that were slain. Forgive me, my son. Tashi took his mother and father back to his abode, and the remainder of the story is very clear for us. He took care of them, and he prospered for the remainder of his days. What do these stories evoke in us? We have time today. It's too early for lunch. Tell us your story. We all, each of us, have a story of loneliness, isolation, misjudgment, lack of understanding. And we also have stories of salvation. What's your story? Now is the time to share. These stories are real. The story of the boy, Tashi's story, have been lived over and over and over again by countless souls. We too are among those souls. What's your story?
My story started, how I actually started on this journey was, I don't cry while I say because I was working and I knew that something had to change, I knew that there was something happening that was here, but I wouldn't exactly look at it. So physically then, something started happening. So physically I would start, my vision would start to go in my eye, and then I would look like, I'd have my eyes open, but this, from here, it would start going like this, and it would get black, and it would get blacker till I just couldn't see at all out of that eye. It would clear again. And then, you know that it's something that you're not looking at, but you're still like a bit scared really to look at it, or maybe not ready, or that fear of fronting it or something. So of course then I went to the doctors, and the doctor, he said, oh, you have to go to an eye specialist. So I went to the eye specialist, and he examined it, and then he said, can't find anything wrong with it. He said, oh, I think I'll send you to a heart specialist. Might have something to do with your heart. But in the background, I knew what it was that had to be done. So anyway, then then I went to some guy down in heart specialist down at Cairns Base, and then he said, oh, can't find anything. Is it still happening? I go, yeah. He goes, oh, maybe you should go to Townsville. And I thought, oh, maybe I should really just look at what it is. So then I did look at it, and it was one of the most painful things. But once I, because I went like that, and I went again. And then once I actually looked at it and started to sort it out, then losing my sight in that eye never happened again. And then that kept me on, then I went on the path of no return. Yeah, that's my story. That's one of my stories. I have lots, but that's the one.
try to put your finger on it, and it's can't get it. It works out. It's what you're looking for is love, and it's well, it's, in the end, when you get it, it's you. There's no such thing as love. It's just you. And then we think we're looking for something, but we're not. When you give up that looking, you just come to a space